Shalom. So, I have made a few changes, as you may have noticed. People wanted to see just how shiny my head is, and said I should expand the video. So I have. Hopefully, people can hear me. And I'm going to, I made a few changes as well to what we were doing, based on feedback I got in the comments and on the Discord server. And I just wanted to know, everybody to know that honestly, this is, I'm trying to make whatever information and resources I have available to you guys. Somebody asked me to go over Jewish prayer, which is what I'm going to do at the beginning, and somebody else requested Deuteronomy 8 as the chapter to do this week, and that's what I'm going to do. Some people, are like, oh, I make this for myself. I started making this for myself. If anybody actually is watching, and people are watching, thank you so much, then I would like to be as much of a resource as possible for you guys. So do leave comments. Please like, subscribe, share to people you think might find this channel interesting. There's a lot of great resources on the internet. I think the one thing that I can do is just be available for you guys, because the people who are making better content aren't as available. So let's go ahead and start on Jewish prayer. We have to start with kind of a history. And again, I'm going to use the Orthodox Jewish view of how our prayers developed. This may not be what an academic look at our prayers would be, but it is consistent with all the information that we have. Although some of the things might not be documentable, these are our traditions. So, how did Jewish prayer start? So, we believe that there was this concept of the 3 daily prayers, Shachrit, Mincha, and Arvit, which were all the way back from the forefathers. If anybody has any questions, please stop me and I will go into things more in detail. One caveat I do want to give at the very beginning: I'm going to be talking about prayer for men. Prayer for women is very, very different in Judaism. There are separate prayer books for women. Women do not have all the requirements that men do, because they are not bound by time-bound commandments like men are. So this is it. If this is not, I'm not going to do all the exceptions for women, because frankly I don't even know them. But so that's a whole separate thing. I'm going to be focusing on prayer for men. And generally, if a woman wants to do the things that men do, she's generally more than welcome to do them, especially with regard to prayers. Women tend to recite Psalms a lot more than men do in the Orthodox communities. Okay, so the 3 timely prayers, right? Shachrit, which is the morning prayer, Mincha, which is the afternoon prayer, and Arvit, which is the evening prayer, we believe goes all the way back to the forefathers. And obviously, there weren't prayer books back then, so people would compose their own prayers. Um, Once there was Mount Sinai, then there were several commandments, most notably the Shema, which became incumbent, right? The Shema says, and you shall recite it when you wake up and when you go to bed, right? So there are many mitzvot in the Torah which, through our prayer book, we um, we try to fulfill all of those mitzvot. Okay, and so the all of this stuff is discussed in Tractate Brachot, which is the first tractate in the Talmud, and that goes through a lot of how do we derive the ordering and things like that, right? And generally, a lot of this stuff became tradition, ways which we do the various things. Um, the Psalms, many of them were composed by King David. They were said at the temple. There were um, there were ma'amadot, what are called ma'amadot, which when people would bring their sacrifices to the temple, they would stand and silently recite prayers, right? And that's where the Amidah comes from. The Amidah is the essential Jewish prayer. It's also called the Shmonesre, which literally means the 18, because originally the weekday Amidah had 18 blessings. The 19th was actually added quite likely as a response to Christianity. That's the Birkat Haminim, the blessing, that's a euphemism, of the heretics. And we've discussed that before. If people are interested in that, I can discuss that separately. But so the Shmon Esrei, during the week, it has um, it has 18 blessings. On Shabbat and most holidays, it has 7 blessings. On Rosh Hashanah, it has 9, and so people would compose each of these, right? So when Jesus is asked how to pray, this was a very, very common question during the Second Temple period. It's something that the many, not just brachot, but many parts of the Talmud go over, right? Why should somebody compose their prayers in certain ways? There were no set prayer books back then. And actually, from what we know, the early Christians recited the Our Father 3 times a day. And the Our Father, I believe, actually is a misunderstanding of the Amidah as Jesus was teaching it. Obviously, it's very hard to reconstruct, but the first 3 blessings are fathers, heaven, and sanctification of the holy name. So people were asking rabbis. It was a common thing for people to ask rabbis how to pray, right? And I believe that's the origin of it within Christianity. So there are all the requirements of things we should think about. There is this idea in Judaism that it is forbidden for a person to have any enjoyment from the world without thanking God. So we have a lot of blessings which are said anytime, even if when you drink, something, or you eat something, before and after there are blessings. So a lot of these prayers in the prayer book are various blessings, thanking God for various things. And since we have a rule that we thank God on bad things just as much as we do for good things because everything comes from God, right? So we also have blessings when bad things happen to us, right? If God forbid somebody dies, we have the blessing Baruch Dayan Emet, right? Blessed is the true judge. If you hear that, right? So we had the Ma'amadot, which started off as the prayers people would say in the temple as their sacrifices were being offered. So the Shachrit, Mincha, and Arvit are kind of affiliated with the various sacrifices. So if you know the sacrifices, and in the korbanot, when we study the actual sacrifices from the Bible, during our prayers, that's part of where all of that comes into, and that's where the prayer times, right? There are very specific times when you should pray, halachic times. I'm not going to get into all of the rules of that, but I want people to understand we're going to go through the prayer book a little bit. I'm going to be speeding through it, but I want people to understand what all these components are, right? So a lot of them are things like the Shema, which we say. There are the Amidah, there is the Tefillah, the actual prayer, which I'm not going to go into because it would take forever. And there are the various blessings that we say around all of this stuff. Okay? Okay. So, as far as the biblical basis, I keep on repeating this because I have to bring this up to Christians all the time. There is this misconception that the destruction of the temple in the year 70 required some sort of shift within Judaism. The destruction of the temple, the first temple, around 500 BCE, 500 years at least before Jesus, 400 years at least, maybe 600, was when there was this kind of necessity to make changes in how Jews serve God. And this is considered one of the things we say is that prayer is our service, right? And so the prophets at that time made certain institutions like the various prayers and things, and that is in the Bible itself, right? We believe that God doesn't really like sacrifices because the Bible tells us so, right? And so that's why Psalm 40, verse 6, right? Zevach umincha lo chafatzta, oznaim karita li, ola vechata lo sha'alta. So literally, zevach is a type of sacrifice. Mincha is another type of sacrifice. Lo chafatzta, you didn't want this, right? Oznaim karita li, you opened my eyes. Karita literally means to cut. Ola vechata, right? Again, these offerings, lo sha'alta, literally you didn't ask for them, right? And Isaiah 1, right? God does not like sacrifices. The institution of the sacrifices were for us because that helped us to better understand. But obviously, God doesn't need anything, right? Anyway, so that part, and in response, we had prophets like Hosea who taught us to pray instead, right? To learn Torah. They instituted, Ezra instituted the Torah readings in order, and the synagogue service all started back after the destruction of the first temple, right? This is Hosea 14, verse 2. Kechu imachem dvarim, veshuvu el havaya, imru elav kol tisa avon, vekach tov, uneshalma parim sifatenu. Okay? So take with you words and return to God. Say to him, take away our sins, right? Kol tisa avon. Vekach tov, and receive, okay, graciously. I don't want to get too much into this because we have a lot to go. Then uneshalma parim sefatenu, and we shall pay, but also we shall become whole, right? The word shalom there, neshalma parim sefatenu. The literally a par is a cow, parim sefatenu, of our lips. So that's where the synagogue service comes from. And after the building of the second temple, there was still the synagogue service, and that synagogue service continued even in Jerusalem where the temple was. And that's why before the destruction of the second temple, while there was the temple, there was still the synagogue services like Jesus went to, like Paul went to, like, right? So this is a misconception. The synagogue services existed prior to the advent of Christianity. Okay, but what did happen is after Christianity, things became more and more set. There were things which were revealed, including the Kabbalah of the Arizal, and the printing of prayer books, so prayer became standardized. Generally, we pray in Hebrew. Obviously, you're supposed to know the meaning of the words. If you don't understand the words, pray in English. But if you are learning to recite things, it's best to recite them as their original, because then you don't have the problem of translation, right? And the problem of translation, which this channel is all about, is that you can't translate something without putting an interpretation into it. And that's why we definitely want, if you're going to be an Orthodox Jew, you pretty much do have to learn Hebrew, certainly today, right? And there are so many ways to do that, but let me show you. So this is where we got some of the differences. There are three what are called nuschaot and nusach, right? Which means, I guess, liturgy, but language. So there are three major nuschaot. There are smaller nuschaot as well. And they developed mostly because when the Arizal revealed what he did reveal, pretty much everybody accepted his teachings, and his sidur, his way of having prayers, became normative within all of Judaism. In Ashkenaz lands, in German lands, there were quite a few people who only took on part of the things that the Arizal said. And then about 200 years after that, with the rise of Hasidism, more of that was taken on. And again, the Nusach changed a bit. So now we have Nusach Ashkenaz, which is the original one when first things in Germany started comporting to what the Arizal taught. There is the secondary one, which is what Nusach Sepharad, which was when the Hasidim started to take on a lot more of what the Arizal taught. And there's Nusach Edot HaMizrach, which is what the actual Sephardim, not the people who accepted and actually had the Arizal's own prayer book, that's what I am Edot Mizrach. That's so those are the three major prayer books. So when you go on to Sefaria, you can, or if you're buying a prayer book, that is the difference between them. So if you click on liturgy, you'll see it has Sidur Ashkenaz, Sidur Edot HaMizrach, and Sidur Sepharad. We're gonna be going into the Sidur Sepharad because it's one of the most common, and it's the one that most people adopt if they don't have a family liturgy already. Okay, or go to a specific thing. There is Nusach Arizal, which is the Chabad Nusach, which is very similar to Nusach Sefarad. It's a little bit different. Chabad also has lots and lots of resources, including this beta where they have a commentary on the Siddur. You can do that on the Chabad website. Okay, so the Siddur Sefarad. Most of this stuff is very, very close to each other, but I had to pick a particular one, and the structure is pretty much the same. Okay, now, so the Siddur starts with Modeh Ani. The word Modeh comes from Hoda'ah, which is the same root as Yehudi, Yehuda, right? So to be a Jew means to be somebody who is modeh, right? So there are three meanings to the word modeh. It means to confess, it means to think, and it means to celebrate. Okay? And all three of those things are integral. No, thank you. Are integral to Judaism, and we start with the Modeh Ani. When you wake up, the first thing you're supposed to say, Modeh Ani lefanecha, right? I thank you, God, and I'm not going to go into all of the particular things, but so that's the first thing you do. And then you are supposed to do the morning washing, and this morning washing has the bracha al netilat yadayim, which so these two, most people you're not saying them out of the siddur. You usually have them memorized, and then first thing you do is go to the bathroom, and in Judaism we thank God for everything. So one of the first things you say is what some people call the Potty Prayer, Asher Yatzar, which is the blessing, thanking God for being able to go to the bathroom. Then you wash your hands again. So any subsequent washing, unless it's to eat bread, you don't say Netilat Yadayim for the rest of the day. You say it once in the morning. Okay, so this is the bracha for putting on your tzitzit, and then there's the talit gadol. There are in many sidurim there's a lot of what's called leshem yichuds, right? So these are Kabbalistic intentions from the Arizal for the sake of the unification, right? And some people say them on so many different things. It's not one of the first things to start with. If you're starting to pray, I would start with saying the blessings, and start by learning the Amidah, then adding the other parts slowly. But we'll actually go through the various synagogue services. So I'm gonna skip most of this stuff because it's a lot of things which however much you can do it. So that's the Modeh Ani, the blessings for Talit and Tefillin, these introductory prayers, there are many prayers that many people have added to this stuff. A lot of these are not obligatory, uh, including the prayer upon entering the synagogue, where the actual prayers start, the morning prayers, is with the morning blessings. And I won't get into all of those, but this is where the hot and spicy blessings that Martin Luther wrote his book on the Jews and their lies about. If you want, ask me about those. But the morning prayers are an important part of Judaism, going through them, and there's a blessing on the Torah. Okay, and then we start getting into the korbanot, which are just mishnayot, which are explaining what happened in the services of the Torah. And this is where the first Kaddish starts. So a Kaddish, the Greek term for it is a doxology. Kaddish is something that is a praise of God that makes a separations between the various stages of the prayers. So and Kaddish, right, is what most people know, because that's the one that individuals recite for their dead. It doesn't actually, the prayer, the Kaddish itself doesn't actually mention anything other than the resurrection of the dead, but it is considered by many people as the prayer for the dead within Judaism. Anyway, so there are various forms of Kaddish, but the first Kaddish said in the morning is right before Hodu, and Hodu starts what's called Pesukei de Zimra. That is, these are just psalms of praise to God. There's a bracha starting it and a bracha ending it. Like pretty much everything gets bookended with brachot. So this part is a bracha starting the psalms, various psalms that we say, a bracha ending the psalms. Then there is a Kaddish, right, to the doxology. Then there is the Baruch Hu, and that is the call to prayer, which starts the actual prayer service. The next part is the Shema, and the Shema has two blessings before it, one blessing after it in the morning. At night, there's two blessings before it, two blessings after it. I won't get into all of that. And then right after the Shema, in the morning and in the evening, which is the two times you say the Shema, you go into the Amidah, which is incredibly important. Now, Tachanun. We only make confessions on certain days. We usually never make any sort of confession on the Sabbath or on holidays. It's during the days of the week, particularly joyous days. We also do not say Tachanun. Tachanun, these are confessions. So the prayers are very different on days when Tachanun is said in the synagogue, as opposed to the days when it's not, even during weekdays. So one of the things that you're going to be, if you're praying in a synagogue, you're going to want to know any day is whether or not it is one of those days when we say Tachanun. The prayers are shorter because then we don't have the confessions. Avinu Malkeinu is only for certain days of the year. Then on Mondays, Thursdays, and obviously on Shabbat, there is the Torah reading. Then there are more psalms. And if it's a day when Musaf is said, which is like Shabbat, then we have another Amidah, a second Amidah in the morning. I'm not going to get into too much things, and then it ends with Aleinu, and Aleinu is the prayer that ends all of each of the services. Okay. Mincha, somewhat similar structure. It's much shorter. A lot of people, most people say korbanot at the very beginning. There are days when there are Torah readings in the afternoon. You say at least one psalm before the Amidah for the afternoon. Then you say the Amidah. Then you say Tachanun on days that Tachanun is said, which is confessions. And then again, it ends with Aleinu. The evening prayers, one of the shortest prayers, especially because there's no repetition of the Amidah. When there is a minyan, when you are in synagogue, when there is a quorum, there will be a repetition of the Amidah. There is no repetition in the evenings. So it starts with the Shema, you have the Amidah, and then ends with Aleinu. Okay, hopefully this was useful to you. If people have questions, please let me know. A lot of this stuff is more blessings, various blessings. Like I said, it is, we say it is forbidden to have any sort of pleasure from the world without actually giving thanks to God. I hope that tour was useful to you. We can go into more if people have questions or want to know about specific things. But otherwise, I am going to go ahead and start on Deuteronomy 8, which was a request. Please, if you have requests for particular channels you want, chapters you want us to do, I'm plenty glad to do them. One of the differences, changes that I made is now the format's a little bit different because people are actually watching. I wasn't expecting people to actually watch. So instead of going through the Hebrew letter by letter every single time, what I'm going to be doing is starting with the 3 translations that we're doing, and then starting with and then going into the Hebrew and only pointing out the things that are a little bit unusual here. If you have questions, please feel free to ask them. That's what I'm here for. Okay. So another change I made is that people seem to have a preference for the New King James Version. Apparently more people actually use that. So we've switched, instead of doing the King James Version, NIV, and Chabad translations, now I'm going to be doing the New King James, NIV, and Chabad. There is a poll on the Discord server. Please, I'm here for you guys. I very much appreciate any feedback you want to give to me. Okay, so let's start in on Deuteronomy 8:1. Every commandment which I command you today, you must, and there's a note here, be careful to observe, that you may live and multiply, another note, and go in and possess the land of which the Lord, another note, swore to your fathers. So let's look at the 3 notes here. So for the first one, observe to do, increase in number instead of multiply, and promised, promised instead of swore. Okay, NIV. Be careful to follow every commandment I am giving you today, so that you may live and increase and may enter and possess the land the Lord promised on oath. So they did kind of the both, right? Promised on oath to your ancestors. Okay, let's see what Chabad's doing here. every commandment that I command you this day, you shall keep to do, that you may live and multiply, and come and possess the land that the Lord swore to your forefathers. Right? Okay, let's look at the Hebrew. Kol ha-mitzvah asher anochi metzavecha hayom tishmerun la'asot lema'an tichiyun urvitem uvatem verishtem et haaretz asher nishba havaya la'avotechem. Okay. So, first thing here, the I is Anochi, which is considered a bit of a more formal I, as opposed to Ani. So command you, Metzavecha, right? Hayom Tishmerun. So this is the root is Shin Mem Resh, right? To keep. And you'll notice at the end it has what's called a paragogic nun. Now, if you go into the Unfolding Word Hebrew Grammar website, where they have a lot of explanations of Hebrew grammar, they have the suffix paragogic nun, and you will be very glad to know that the paragogic nun suffix can only attach to a finite verb, and its meaning is unknown. So I think part of the reason that this verse has several paragogic nuns is simply because it is more of a lyric, right? Whether it's some sort of emphasis. I've seen people who say that it's actually a remnant of older Hebrew, proto-biblical Hebrew. However you want to do that, there's discussions about why there is that paragogic nun, but that's what's going on over there. La'asot, right, to do, the root is ayin sin hey. Lama'an tichyun, again, we have that paragogic nun there. The possessed, this nun always confused me. Yes, it is confusing, and right. Actually, apparently, a lot of the times that it shows up just as a dagesh. You don't actually see the nun. So apparently, in the priestly blessing, why it says vehuneka instead of vihunecha, right? Why does that change to a ka? Because there's that nun, right? It's from honen, right? And that nun gets folded into vehuneka, right? So, a lot of these rules were retroconned back onto what the actual language was anyway. So I don't put an incredibly large amount of stock into what the linguists say, because ultimately I think the best thing you can do in order to gain insight is to pray. Right. So these are actually these you'll see all the ands, right? These ands are actually here mostly because they're flipping the tenses, right? You'll see that these are in the perfect tense, and they're flipping the tense to the future, right? So I personally think when you are translating, you don't necessarily need to add all of the ands into the English. It just doesn't translate very well. Okay, et haaretz asher nishba. So the word which people were trying to figure out there is shin bet ayin, right? To swear, which is the same, I believe. No, it's not. I mean, there are oaths in the Bible. You can use your concordance here, and la'avotechem, and this is all y'all. It's the plural of the second person. masculine. And this is the Tetragrammaton, obviously. Okay, I think that's all there. Verse 2. And you shall remember that the Lord your God led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you and test you, to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not. Okay. NIV. Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years to humble and test you in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commandments. Okay? And and you shall remember the entire way on which the Lord your God led you these 40 years in the desert, in order to afflict you, to test you, to know what is in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not. Okay, let's look at the Hebrew. V'zacharta et kol haderech asher holichecha havaya elokecha ze 40 shana bamidbar למען anotcha lenasotcha לדעת את אשר בלבביך hatishmar. And now here we have a change between the kativ and the kri. We read it as if there is a yud here, but there isn't actually a yud there in the scroll. And actually, a lot of this is written in bechisaron with lacking the vavs, right? Anotcha, lenasotcha, right? So in case you're keeping track of that, im lo, or not. So let's see. Remember is Zachar, Zayin, Chaf, Resh. The way is Derech, Dalet, Resh, Chaf. Holichecha. I really expected a vav there, but this is the hefil. It's the causative of lech, right? Halacha, to holech, to walk. So God caused you to walk. Havaya Elokecha ze 40 shana bamidbar. There is an article there in the vocalization. Leman anotcha. Again, I expected above there. Lenasotcha leda'at, and to know here is that intimate knowledge, right? De'ad daled ayin hey et asher b'levavecha. So heart here has the two bets, and so there are two ways you can write heart in Hebrew: lev with one bet, or levav with two bets. And we generally say that lev is with a pure heart, and levav is with, both your evil inclination and your good inclination. Hatishmor, again, I expected vav, kind of, I guess. And the difference between kativ and kri, this doesn't happen so much in the Pentateuch, in the 5 books of Moses, as it does in the rest of the Bible, where it is written one way and it is said another way. Sometimes it's partially because of euphemisms. There are certain things which are written, which in public readings we use different euphemisms for in the Bible. And we had a huge discussion on that on the Discord server. Okay, so let's keep on going. Next verse 3. So he humbled you, allowed you to hunger, and fed you with manna, which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, that he might make you know that man shall not live by bread alone, but man lives by every word that proceeds from the mouth of the Lord. A very famous verse. he humbled you, causing you to hunger, and then feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your ancestors had known, to teach you that manna does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. Chabad. And he afflicted you and let you go hungry, and then fed you with manna, which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, so that he would make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but rather by whatever comes forth from the mouth of the Lord does man live. Okay? And the Hebrew, Vaya'ancha, Vayar'ivcha, Vayachilcha, et Haman, asher lo yadata, velo yada'un abotecha, lema'an hodi'acha, ki lo al halechem levado yichyeh ha'adam, ki al kol motza pi havaya yichyeh ha'adam. Okay, interesting. So Ya'ancha, this is the same root as Ta'anit, fast, right? So afflicted, humbled. Anav means humble. They are related roots, I would say. Vayarivcha, so the root is Resh Ayin Bet, Avon, right, to be hungry. And I'm kind of surprised that this in the Hefil does not have the Yod here. Again, this text seems to be written bechisaron, right, without the full lettering. Same thing, Yachilcha, this is ochel, to consume. So it's the causative of ochel, to consume. He caused you to consume, he fed you. And again, bechisaron yod, et Haman. Now, I kind of expected the word ma here, right, which means what. I think other places in the Bible it explains that the word, or this might be a rabbinic tradition, the word man comes from the word ma, meaning what, right? Since you did not know what it was. So the word man or manna may come from the word ma, meaning, which is the interrogatory what. Lo yadata, again, this is the intimate knowledge. We have a paragogic nun, again, down here, yida'un. Avotecha, again, chisaron vav, lama'an, right? And this is a poetic text, right? Or lama'an, right? We're repeating the same sounds, alliterating, because this is more of a song here. Hodi'acha, again, very surprised. Hefil, usually the yuds are written, and here da'at is, it's milui vav, but chisaron yud. Ki lo al halechem, right? And this is bread as in Beit Lechem, right? The house of bread. Levado, alone, right? And it's a little bit strange that it's a levado with a vav, right? By itself, you could have just it could have just said halechem levad, yichye, but it might also just be poetic there. So this is the imperfect of to live. Ha-adam, so this is speaking of man as in Adam, right? Adam. Ki. And here, ki, which usually we translate as because or since, is actually obviously being used as a but, right? It's being used a little bit differently. The al is with the ayin, not aleph. Kol motza. They're just saying this is the noun form of hotza'ah. So to come out, yet latzet, right? Yetze, yatsa yod tzaddik aleph, I believe the root is there, and it's put into the hefil, right? So hamotzi lechem min haaretz, right? Which is the blessing on bread that we say. This is the noun form, motza, thing that comes out with the milui vav there, if you're keeping track. Fi is in the construct form with the tetragrammaton, so that's how the mouth of God, right? Fi havaya, yeah, yichye ha'adam, right? Yep, that's pretty much it. Let's go next verse. Verse 4. Your your garments did not wear out on you, nor did your foot swell these 40 years. Your clothes did not wear out, and your feet did not swell during these 40 years. Okay, and Chabad, your clothing did not wear out upon you, nor did your foot swell these 40 years. They're all saying the same thing, and that is based on the Rashis. You can read the Rashis here yourself if you like. Okay, so simlatcha lo balta ma'alecha veraglecha lo batzeka ze arbaim shana. Let's actually read the Rashis here on batzek, right? Swell. Hebrew lo batzeka. This means neither did your foot swell, like batzek. Betzek is dough, right? As usually happens with those who walk barefoot. Okay, I did not know this. I don't walk very barefoot very often, but that's I was kind of wondering why it was like dough batzek, but so that made sense to me. Okay, so the word for garment here is simla, which is not the most common. Usually when we talk about garments, we use the word beged. This is sin mem lamed. Yeah, and you can use your concordance there. Balta, so livlot actually means to be swallowed, right? And so that's being translated as, okay. Oh, you know what? I was thinking of bala with an ayin. This is with a hey, which means to wear out. And it is used 17 times in the Bible. Okay. And you can use your concordance there. Balta. With a hey there, I guess because simla is in the feminine, that's why it's in the feminine. Me alecha, from upon you. Prepositional mem, the al here is with an ayin, not aleph. And it's in the we've switched from all y'all to the singular you all, right? So it's second person and masculine singular. Veraglecha, right? The word regel, pretty much what we use for foot. Lo batzeka, we discussed the batzeka. Betzek is dough, right? Ze arbaim shana, and arbaim has a yod, which isn't strange. Shana means year. Okay, next verse. You should know in your heart that as a man chastens his son, so the Lord your God chastens you. Let's look at the note there is consider. Okay. I wonder what the word is that they're translating as consider. 5. Know then in your heart that as a man disciplines his son, so the Lord your God disciplines you. Okay. And Chabad, you shall know in your heart just as a man chastises his son, so does the Lord your God chastise you. Okay. Hebrew v'yada'ata im levavecha. Interesting. Ki ka'asher yaser ish et beno havaya elokecha meyasreka. Interesting. Okay, so this is again, this is just the it's the perfect being flipped of to know, and the preposition here is im, with, which is not normal, right? You shall know with your heart. Not sure why it's with. That's interesting there. Levavcha, again with the two bets. Ki kasher yaser, right? This is like the word musar in Proverbs, right? It says, remember the chastisement of your father. Ish et beno, man to his child. Havaya elokecha, right? This is singular you. Meyasreka, same root, except here it's in the present tense, right? Which we don't use the present tense very much in the Bible. Okay, next verse. Observe the commands of the Lord your God, walking in obedience to him and revering him. Therefore you shall keep the commandments of the Lord your God, to walk in his ways and to fear him. Okay. And you shall keep the commandments of the Lord your God, to go in his ways and to fear him. Okay. Hebrew, Veshamarta et mitzvot havaya elokecha lalechet bedrachav ul yir'ah Oto. Okay, so shamarta, again, like yadata, this is to keep, et mitzvot, pretty normal, right? Commandments. Havaya elokecha, with the singular you. Lalechet, so this is the infinitive of to walk in his ways, like we had at the beginning. We're using the same words, right? That God led you on the way, right? We're using the same thing. Ul yir'ah, and the yir'ah here they're saying feminine singular. I think this is a paragogic hey. Again, whether it's poetic or whether it's for emphasis, that's up to you. Oto, and right, him, which is the direct object marker. Pretty normal stuff. The word fear here, yir'ah, is yud resh aleph. I usually translate that as awe, but yeah. Okay, let's keep on going. Verse 7. For the Lord is bringing you into a good land, a land with brooks, streams, and deep springs gushing out into the valley and hills. Okay? For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land of brooks of water, of fountains and springs that flow out of the valleys and hills. Okay? And the Lord your God is bringing you to a good land, a land filled with brooks of water, fountains, and depths that emerge in valleys and mountains. Okay, slightly different ways. Hebrew, ki havaya elokecha mevi'acha El Eretz Tova, Eretz Nachalei Amayim, Ayanot Utehomot, Yotzim Bebik'ah Uvahar. Okay. Mevi'acha here is the hefil of the to go, right? Bet vav aleph. Here it's in the causative, right, of to go. Mevi, to bring. El, this El is with an aleph, not ayin. Eretz tova. Tova is feminine because Eretz is feminine. Eretz Nachalei Amayim, so this is one large construct, right? A land of Nachal, I guess brook or river. Mayim, right? Water. Ayanot. So ayan. So this comes from the same root as water, or as I, right? Ayin, but mayanot, right, are also well springs, and comes from the same root as the word I, and I would have expected a vav there. Tehomot, similarly, tehom. You probably will remember from Genesis 1, right? The tehom, actually, Jordan Peterson talks about that in his books, the word tehom. You can use your concordance there. Yotzim, again, like motza'a, right? To cause to flow out. There aren't, a lot of these are written bechisaron vav, if you're keeping track of that. But Bik'ah, valleys, does have an article in the vocalization there, and right, this is feminine Bik'ah. I'm not sure if Bik'ah is always feminine. Uvahar, right? And again, this har, this hills, actually does have article. Like I say in Hebrew, unlike English, in English we say cats are cute. In Hebrew you say cat is cute to talk about in generalities. Let's keep going. Verse 8. A land of wheat and barley, of vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey. So this is the verse where we get the seven fruits that the land of Israel was blessed with, and that's why they have specific blessings going back to the Siddur, and there's a lot of things that go along with the particular blessings of those foods. Verse 8, a land, did I forget to read? A land with wheat and barley, vines and fig trees, pomegranates, olive oil, and honey. A land of wheat and barley, vines and figs and pomegranates, a land of oil-producing olives and honey. So let's see what the Hebrew there is. Eretz chita useora, vegefen ute'ena, verimon, eretz zeit shemen ud devash. Okay, so this land is in construct form with chita, which means wheat, seora, barley, with a chisaron vav. Geffen is vine, like we say Bora Priya Geffen, right? The fruit of the vine, and it's specifically grapevine. I don't think it's used for other types of wine. Ute'ena, te'ena is figs, The Rimon, the Rimon is Bemilui Vav there, pomegranates, Eretz, so now it has land again. Zait Shemen, olives of, so olive, Zait is an olive. This is in construct form with shemen, with oil, right, or fat. Shemen also means fat. Devash, and honey. So generally, it was believed that the word honey here is actually dates, right? Date honey. Um, actually, archaeologists have found a huge honeybee producing um, building in the land of Israel, and it's pretty interesting there. So there was bee honey as well, but this is generally considered to be dates because date honey was much more common, I believe. Okay, let's. Rashi here is explaining why it says zait shemen, right? Olives that produce oil, um, as opposed to, I guess, other forms of olives. Okay. Verse 9. A land of which you will eat bread without scarcity, in which you will lack nothing, a land whose stones are iron, and out of whose hills you can dig copper. Okay. A land where bread will not be scarce, and you will lack nothing, a land where the rocks are iron, and you can dig copper out of the hills. Chabad. A land in which you will eat bread without scarcity, you will lack nothing in it, a land whose stones are iron, and out of whose mountains you will hew copper. Okay, let's see what their Hebrew here is. Eretz asher lo bamiskanot tochal ba lechem lo techsar kol ba Eretz asher avaneha barzel umeharereha tachbotz nechoshet. Okay. So the word I got, so miskenot, the root is samech chaf nun, which is danger. Okay. But misken is somebody who is who is a poor person. So misken, so of uncertain derivation. So they're not thinking that it comes from the same root as sakana, danger, which I'm kind of wondering why not. Dubious, usually derived from saken, perhaps loanword from something else. Yeah, misken, right? In modern Hebrew, when you want to say somebody who's poor thing, right? You say misken. Yeah. So whether or not it comes from danger or not, I guess they're saying no. Miskenut, that's with a kubutz instead of a shuruk, which, I guess it's tochal, right, to consume. Bah is because eretz is feminine. Lechem again is bread. Techsar, right? Chaser, it means to lack. Kol ba eretz asher avaneha, stones, right? The stones here is Evan, Aleph Bet Nun, which is related to, I think you could say brick, right, to build. Barzel means iron. Mehareha, so this, har is usually how we say it. Harareha, I guess, is kind of a poetic way of, because it has two resh. Yeah, same as har, but it's used a few times. I guess it's really there because of it because of the poetry of the thing. Tachbots, not a verb I know very well. It's written bechisaron vav. How many times does it show up? I think usually it's used to hew wood. 25 occurrences. Cut, dig, divide, grave, hew out, made, mason. Hew in pieces. Hew stone, dig out wells. Yeah. Okay. So that's where that comes from. Nechoshet, meaning copper. And here, both tachbots and nechoshet are written without vavs, which not too strange. Okay. Verse 10. When you have eaten and are satisfied, praise the Lord your God for the good land he has given you. When you have eaten and are full, then you shall bless the Lord your God for the good land which he has given you. And people who say Birkat HaMazon will remember this verse because it's in the bracha. We say grace after meals. This is where the actual commandment to say grace after meals comes from. And you will eat and be sated, and you shall bless the Lord your God for the good land he has given you. Right. ואכלת ושבעת וברכת את הוויה אלוקיך על הארץ הטובה אשר נתן לך. So this is achalta, it's being flipped with the vav, as are the other ones. To consume. Sova, sin bet ayin is to be full, right? To be satiated. Barachta, right? You shall bless God. Al is with the preposition, with the ayin. Haaretz, the good land. Hatova, it's the articles, because this is an adjective. The adjective also takes an article when the noun does. Asher natan lach, has given, right? Natan is to set or to give. And curiously, the lach here is second person feminine, not masculine, even though they're saying second person masculine. Lach is the feminine form. Yeah. I guess possibly it's being switched from lecha because it is at the end of a verse because of the cantillations. I guess that's possible. I don't know cantillations very well, so I'll have to excuse me. But lach is usually feminine. Okay, verse 11. Beware that you do not forget the Lord your God by not keeping his commandments, his judgments, and his statutes, which I command you today. Be careful that you do not forget the Lord your God, failing to observe his commandments, his laws, and his decrees that I am giving you this day. Beware that you do not forget the Lord your God by not keeping his commandments, his ordinances, and his statutes, which I command you this day. Right. Okay, and the Hebrew, Hishamer lecha pen tishkach et havaya elokecha levilti shamor mitzvotav umishpatav v'chukotav asher anochi mitzadecha hayom. Okay, so Hishamer, this is in the Nifal, be wary, right? To keep, and this is the passive form of Shomer, to guard. So be guarded, I guess. Lecha, pen is oftentimes translated as lest, right? Tishkach, shachach is to forget. Et havaya lebilti, right? So bilti means not. It's it has a prepositional lamed there. You can use your concordance there. It's not that common of a way of saying not. I'm wondering how many times it shows up in the Bible. It shows up 112 times, which may seem like a lot, but for a word like not, the other ways of saying not show up thousands of times. Okay, labilti shamor. So keeping is bechisaron vav here. I guess that's kind of normal. Now, these three words, mitzvot, mishpatim, and chukot, right? They're usually translated in the same way. Mitzvah is usually translated as commandment. Mishpat is usually translated as judgment. Comes from the root shofet, right? Shoftim is the book of Judges, so a shofet is a judge. Vechukotav, a chok, is a law. It's usually translated as statutes. Now, in Judaism, we make a differentiation between the three types of mitzvot that there are. Mishpatim are called judgments because they are things which the person can understand from his own judgment, right? That you shouldn't kill people, right? Mitzvot, also sometimes called otot, called signs, are the types of commandments which are specific to Israel to set Israel apart. So most specifically, circumcision is called a mitzvah, is called an ot. Shabbat is called an ot. And these are things which generally we say only apply to Jews. And a chok is things we don't understand, okay? And we do them because God said so. And a lot of things are called chukim, including the laws of kosher, right? Specifically, it's called a chok. And chukot, kind of expected a vav there, but yeah, that's fine. His commandments. Anochi here is the more formal I, mitzavecha hayom, right, today. Mitzavecha is in the present tense, right? Yep. Let's keep on. Ooh, what did I do? Didn't mean to do that. Okay, verse 12. Lest when you have eaten and are full and have built beautiful houses and dwell in them, let's see what the note is, satisfied, right? Like we had before, I think. Let's see, 12. Otherwise, when you eat and are satisfied, when you build fine houses and settle down, okay, lest you eat and be sated and build good houses and dwell therein. Okay, let's see what the Hebrew is. Pen tochal vesavata uvatim tovim tivne veyashavta. Okay, so you'll notice it's the same words, the same, this is alliterating poetic text. Pen, again, is lest. Tochal, Hisaron Vav, as you would expect, it's an imperfect. You will eat. Vesavata, so the end there is to flip it from the perfect to the imperfect. Uvatim tovim tivne, right? And in the Hebrew, you hear the bet, right? The alliteration. That's part of the poetry, right? But bait is a house. Batim is houses. Tovim, literally good, but yeah, I mean beautiful or fine. however you want to put it, tivne, from the root to build, bet nun he, ve'yashavta, and you settle, right? It doesn't say in them, but it's implied. Yeah. And ve'yashavta, it kind of alliterates with savata, right? So there is this is a very poetic text. It's repeating the same sounds over and over again, which you don't really get in translation. Verse 13, and when your herds and your flocks multiply, and your silver and your gold are multiplied, and all that you have is multiplied. So let's see what the note there is. Increased. Okay. Verse 13, and when your herds and flocks grow large, and your silver and gold increase, and all you have is multiplied. Okay, and your herds and your flocks multiply, and your silver and gold increase, and all that you have increases. So let's see what the Hebrew is. Uvakarcha v'tzoncha yirveyun v'chesed v'zahav yirbe lach v'chol asher lecha yirbe. So the same root, Rav, is being used over and over again, right? The first one has a paragogic nun at the end. It's in the and yeah, Yerbe here. I think I think that's a paragogic hey there. The whole asher lecha yirbe again. This says third person masculine singular. No, I think what's going on there is all of them have that paragogic hey there. The first one is with paragogic nun. It says yirbe lach. So this you again is in the feminine, right? And here it's lecha. Again, this may be a trope thing with the cancellations, but lach generally is the feminine, and this does happen in the Torah. You switch between masculine and feminine in ways that really in the English you can't tell. Bakar v'tzon, I was expecting, I guess maybe different words for bakar is large animals, tzon is small animals. Yeah, you can use your concordance if you like there. Yeah, not a lot of vavs used. Tzon could have had a vav. Your beyun, I guess, it could have been written with a shuruk. It's written with a kubutz. Okay, verse 14. Then your heart will become proud, and you will forget the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. When your heart is lifted up, and you forget the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage. Let's see what the note there is. Becomes proud. I'm wondering what the Hebrew there is. And your heart grows haughty, and you forget the Lord your God, who has brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Let's see here. 14. Ve'ram levavecha, ve'shachachta et havaya elokecha, hamotziacha me'eretz Mitzrayim mi beit avadim. So Ram actually means high, right? Raised. Yamin Hashem Ramema, the right hand of God raises up, right? So Levavecha is written with two bets, as you would expect. Usually when we're talking about things like your heart not doing what it's supposed to do, usually it's with the two bets. So veram levavecha, and your heart goes up, I guess, is lifted up. Veshachachta is the same, forget. Et direct object marker, Hashem Elokecha, hamotzicha, right? So again, we're having this same root motzi, right? Yatsa, over and over again, and that doesn't really come out. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. That's the bracha. In the Hebrew, this is very reminiscent of actually the blessings of eating, and all of it is very involved here with Tractate Brachot, which we just happened, two different people, one person asked for Deuteronomy 8 and the other person asked for going over the Siddur, and just happened to kind of coincide here. Me'eretz Mitzrayim, synchronicity from the land of Mitzrayim, Egypt, Mi Beit Avadim. So Eretz Mitzrayim, it's in the construct. Beit Avadim is in the construct again, right? And so an Eved is literally a slave, but a servant, right? And usually, I have whole things on Egypt and slavery, if you are interested. Verse 15. Who led you through that great and terrible wilderness, in which were fiery serpents and scorpions, and thirsty land where there was no water, who brought water for you out of the flinty rock. Verse 15. He led you through the vast and dreadful wilderness, that thirsty and waterless land, with its venomous snakes and scorpions. He brought you water out of hard rock. Okay, Chabad. Who led you through that great and awesome desert, in which were snakes, vipers, and scorpions. So Chabad is translating this as three different things. And drought, where there was no water, who brought water for you out of solid rock. So let's see what the actual Hebrew is. Hamolichacha bamidbar hagadol vehanora nachash saraf ve'akrav ve'tzimaon asher ein mayim hamotzi lecha mayim mitzur hachalamish. Right. So Malichacha, right, again, is the leading that we had before. Here written completely b'milui with the Vav and the Yud. Bamidbar with an article, right, in the desert or wilderness. Hagadol, the great one, written b'chisaron Vav. Nora is written b'milui Vav. And Nora comes from the same root yirah, right? That I said I translate as awe. That's part of the reason why the word Nora. I like to use awe both, right? Fear, and you'll notice again it's using the same words. This is a highly alliterative poetic text here. So there actually in the tropes there is a that you'll see is that break there. That's in the cantillations. So while the Christian, the first two translations, Nachash Saraf, right? So Nachash is a serpent. Saraf, like a seraphim, right? The angels, seraphs, right? Literally comes from fire, and so it's being translated there. Fiery serpents. Because of that break, that is why Chabad is saying the saraf is something else, which is causing. It's not one word, right? Nachash saraf. There is in the tropes a break there. Akrav, are scorpions. Vetzimaon. So tzama, tzadik mem aleph is thirst. Tzimaon, with above there is thirsty. The land is implied, and I guess that's why Chabad decided to do drought, tzimaon, instead of a thirsty land. Asher ein mayim, which does not have water, and this is very similar to the Psalm, right, which says Eretz Sia ve'ayef ein bo mayim, right? That repetition. It's a dry land without water. Also in the Psalms, it's a poetic way of saying. Ein is the opposite of yesh, of is. There is not mayim. Hamotzi, again, the same root, motzi, this time written with complete milui, right? Vav and the yod. Lecha mayim mitzur, and again, tzur doesn't always have a vav. This verse is very much bemilui. And I think, as I've explained before, generally we say that the things which are indicating bad things are oftentimes written bechisaron, and things which are good things are written more bemilui, written more completely. Hachalamish, and chalamish doesn't show up so many times, I don't think. The reason I know the word is because of the song that is based on this verse, right? I think it's from, I forget which Nigun it is, but Chalamish is in a song that we sing a lot. Only 5 occurrences. Poetry, yeah. Possibly from hole, which means to dig or to or something profane, or from chalam. Chalam. Chalam is to dream, to be healthy or strong. It's used that way many times, apparently, 30 times, chalam. The way I know it is from chalom, to dream. Okay. Next verse. 16. He who fed you in the wilderness with manna, which your fathers did not know, that he might humble you and that he might test you to do you good in the end, right? And already I can tell it's going back on the beginning. It's kind of bookending the whole thing with similar verbiage as it started with. He gave you manna to eat in the wilderness, something your ancestors had never known, to humble and test you, so that in the end it might go well with you. Who fed you with manna in the desert, which your forefathers did not know, in order to afflict you and in order to test you, to benefit you in your end. Let's look at the Hebrew. Hamachilcha man bamidbar, asher lo yidaun avotecha lema'an anotcha ulema'an nasotcha lehetivcha ba'acharitecha. So this is only the last 2 words are really different from what we spoke about before. Ma'achil, again, written bechisaron yod here, which is, I'm a little surprised, right? To cause you to eat. Man bamidbar has an article in the vocalization. Yedaun, again, has a paragogic nun there, and it's the more intimate way of knowing. Avotecha, chisaron vav, again, your forefathers, and it's the singular you, not all y'all, but second person masculine singular. Lama'an anotecha, again without a vav there on anot. Ulama'an anasotcha, again without a vav on there. Lehetivcha, that's a little bit more understandable that there's not that second yud there. Hetivcha, be'acharitecha, and acharitecha in the end. So there's the prepositional bet there and the suffix second person masculine singular. Acharit, right? So achar means after, right? Ahor means behind, right? In and we talk about acharit hayamim, right? At the end of days. So right in the when it shall all be over, I guess. Yeah, acharit. Interesting. And it's written with a yud there. Okay. Let's see. Verse 17. Then you say in your heart, my power and the might of my hand have gained me this wealth. One of the most famous verses in the Bible. You may say to yourself, my power and the strength of my hand, kochi ve'otzem yodi, have made asali ha'chayla, have produced this wealth for me. One of the verses I actually know the Hebrew of. And you will say to yourself, my strength and the might of my hand that has accumulated this wealth for me. So let's look at the Hebrew. Ve'amarta, and you will say, right? Bilvavecha has the two bets. Kochi, not strange that it's written without a vav. I think koach pretty much usually is written without a vav. Koach means strength, right? Power. The otzem, so etzem is the word of well, etzem means like bones or atzmaot, right? Atzamot. Otzem can also mean the essence, right? And yeah, might, right? Atzum venora, right? Very mighty and great. And I guess awful would be the word, or terrible. Does verse 17 appear in rabbinic literature? Yes, verse 17 shows up a lot in what we would call musar, right? Which is words that are supposed to kind of be humbling. So oftentimes when people are trying to, I have heard this verse being used so many times that I actually know the Hebrew in sermons. As far as whether it's like in the Talmud and stuff, I'm not sure, but it's definitely used in a lot of sermons, right? And the funny thing is, kochi ve'otzem yadi, right? This verse, my strength and my might, right? The might of my hands. It's in the construct form with yad, with hand, right? My hand. Those three words are known as the type of thing. It's quoted as the type of thing that somebody says that they never should say. Kochi ve'otzem yadi. So it's very it's famous for its meaning, if that's clear. Literally means my power and my strength, but when it's quoted, it's usually talking about people who are not putting God in the right place, people who think they're so great and they don't understand that it's God who noten lecha lasot chayil, right? So that this verse gets, yes, it's a very often quoted verse. Asa, right? So made, right? Created. And I think the word gained doesn't really show, right? So we say that Yamin Hashem Robema, Yamin Hashem Osechayil, right? The right hand of God lifts up, the right hand of God um, Osechayil makes wealth, right? Produces wealth. That's from Psalms, but very similar. The psalm, I think, very obviously is going off of Deuteronomy. Similar construction, right? Made for me, created. I would actually translate created and not gained. Li chayil, right, is wealth, or greatness, I guess. Beauty, maybe, has it. This wealth and greatness. Yeah. Let's keep on going. And you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, and that he may establish his covenant, which he swore to your fathers as it is this day. Confirm is the note there. Okay. But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth and so confirms his covenant, which he swore to your ancestors as it is today. Okay. But you must remember the Lord your God, for it is he that gives you strength to make wealth, in order to establish his covenant which he swore to your fathers, as it is this day. Okay, the Hebrew. Vezacharta et havaya Elokecha, ki hu hanoten lecha koach la'asot chayil lema'an hakim et brito asher nishba la'avotecha kayom hazeh. And there's that pay there, which is the punctuation saying there's a petucha there. So very similar language as we had at the beginning, right? Zacharta, you shall remember, Hashem Elokecha, Kihu, because it is he, right? So the pronoun, because Hebrew does not have a present tense of the verb to be, sometimes that pronoun is used kind of in that way. And noten here is in the participle. This is very much in the present tense. Lecha koach, right? So just like last verse, koach, right? La'asot, to create chayil, like the previous verse. Lama'an hakim. So this is the hefil of the word kof vav mem, which is to rise, right? And lahakim is oftentimes translated as establish, right? To cause to be upright, literally, right? But to actually, I wouldn't so much translate this as establish his covenant as to fulfill his covenant. Is that how Chabad translated it? No, they did establish as well. But lehakim brit usually isn't so much to establish as in begin, as to fulfill, as to keep a covenant. Et brito, his covenant. Asher nishbat la'avotecha, avot is without a vav, which normal. And there are two forms of breaks in the scroll. There's a petucha, which the next verse starts on the next line, so there's no word at the margin, and it's easier to see. It's considered a greater break than a setuma. And oftentimes a chapter will end on a petucha. I'm guessing there's another petucha just a few verses from here, which is why this isn't where the chapter ends, but sometimes chapter endings don't make a lot of sense. I would generally say that when you see a petucha, I would consider it the end of a chapter. Okay. Verse 19. If you ever, let's do this one. Then it shall be, if you by any means forget the Lord your God and follow other gods and serve them and worship them, I testify against you this day that you shall surely perish. If you ever forget the Lord your God and follow other gods and worship and bow down to them, I testify against you today that you will surely be destroyed. Okay. And it will be, if you forget the Lord your God and follow other gods and worship them and prostrate yourself before them, I bear witness against you this day that you will surely perish. Let's see what the Hebrew is. V'haya im shachoach tishkach et havaya elokecha v'halachta acharei Elohim acherim v'avadtam v'hishtachavita lahem ha'idoti bachem hayom ki avod toavedun. Interesting. I was expecting mut tumat there, but this is avod. Okay. This is a more interesting verse than I thought it would be. So in the Hebrew we have that repetition, which oftentimes gets translated as surely, right? In Genesis, it's you shall surely die. It's mot timot, right? You shall die, right? That repetition. And here it's shachoach tishkach, right? So it's the same root to forget, and it's in a repetitive form, right? The infinitive absolute before the imperfect, right? Et havaya elokecha, halachta, to follow. So it's using the same verb as it was from the very beginning, right? That God is causing you to go, and here halachta, right? You actually go. It's using the same verb. Acharei, like acharit, right after. Elohim, and so as an Orthodox Jew, you have to always keep in mind when you're using names of God in a profane way, because it's just as wrong to, well, I wouldn't say just as wrong, but it is considered wrong to, for example, here where we're obviously talking about other gods, or sometimes we're talking about human beings, we don't use the euphemisms or ways of avoiding actually using the name of God when the word itself is profane, right? It's kind of like capitalizing the gods here is wrong in English. So if you were to say Elohim instead of Elohim here, that's also considered kind of wrong. So people do keep in mind when they're being, whether or not it's being used in a profane way or if it's referring to God. Va'avadtem, so to serve them, right? This is from la'avod. Avodat habayit is the sacrifices, right? In the temple. So avadatem, avadatam. Vehishtachavitem, so hishtachavaya, very strange word. I may have to actually spend some time on it, but this is the word. It literally means to bow, and it's usually translated as worship. Wait, can you repeat that again about pronouncing God in a bad way? Okay, so the word God, for example, the word Elohim, right, being used in a profane way, right? So if it's it doesn't have to be for bad. It doesn't have to be for right. So judges are sometimes called Elohim, right? They're also called God, right? or Bene Elohim, we talk about angels or divine beings, right? Bene Elohim. Because we are careful not to, for example, say that word when it is the name of God. If it's the name of God, I will say Elohim or Elokecha, right? Switching out the hey with the K sound, right? So that I am not saying God's name in profane usage. Obviously, if you're reading the Torah itself, you can go ahead, but because I stop in the middle of verses and stuff, and we're having discussions, I prefer not to mention the fact that I'm bareheaded. That's a whole other thing. But at the same time, when it's not referring to the name of God, you don't want to say Elohim instead of Elohim when it's referring to a human being or to an angel or to idols or like it is here. Okay? Lahem ha'idoti. So I totally expected there to be yuds and vavs here, right? The root is from ed, right? Ma'id. An ed is a witness, just like false witness in the Ten Commandments. This is the hefil, but they're just, I expected this to be more bimilui, and it's obviously bechisaron. It's the hefil, it's in a causative form of to testify to, haidati. And while I understand so this is in the perfect, it's actually in the completed, which is interesting because when you're translating it, you probably will keep it in the past tense. I would kind of say that it's I bear witness. You say it in the present tense, but it is in the Hebrew. It is a completed action. Haidoti. So, however you want to do that. Bachem, prepositional bet. This is all y'all, not a singular. Hayom, this day. Ki avod to'evedun. I expected this to be death, right? Mavet. The root here is aleph bet daled, which means to be lost or destroyed. And this does have a paragogic nun on it, and it is in the plural. Okay. Last verse. As the nations which the Lord destroys before you, so you shall perish, because you would not be obedient to the voice of the Lord your God. Like the nations the Lord destroyed before you, so you will be destroyed for not obeying the Lord your God. As the nations the Lord destroys before you, so will you perish, since you will not obey the Lord your God. And the Hebrew, Ka goyim asher havaya ma'avid mipnechem, ken tovedun ekev lo tishma'un bekol havaya elokecha. And there's another petucha. So obviously, because they don't want to have a chapter that's only 2 verses long, that's why this, and chapter 8 is kind of short, there's only 20 verses. That's probably why they cut the chapter on the second petucha as opposed to the first petucha. But really in the scrolls, this is kind of a chapter by itself. Kagoyim, right, the goyim is written bemilui vav here, which I guess is normal. There is an article in the vocalization. Ma'abid is the hefil causative, but it's in the present tense. It's in the participle. Destroys. Mipnechem, panim obviously means face. Pnechem, right, from in front of you, right? Mipnechem. Ken so to'ovedun. Again, and this is la'avod. It has a paragogic nun again. Ekev is really interesting here. So the word ekev, ein kuf bet, literally means heel. And the name Jacob, Yaakov, comes from the same root. Yes, it does mean because, but literally it's the heel of, or kind of like, well, this chapter seems kind of, I would call it messianic, because it says acharitcha, right, in the end, and ekev, that's also considered something having to do, right, ikvita, the Mashiach, right, the coming of the Messiah. So that's an interesting word, ekev, here, as a heel, right, or because. Lo tishme'un, so this is a Shema, right, to listen, and it has a paragogic nun. Bekol, there is no article in the vocalization, and kol is pretty much always written b'milui vav, and it's in a construct form with the tetragrammaton, so the voice of God, right? And the voice of God, right, is there. There are psalms about the voice of God, right? So it's pretty obvious that there are psalms which are very much related to this chapter specifically. And Elokecha, Chem, sorry, that's the masculine plural. Yeah. So that is the entire chapter. If you have requests, if you have questions, please feel free to ask here or in the Discord server. I do not see any questions. Let me see. Let me make sure somebody who is from the okay. I just want to make sure that this person who just joined the server has access to ask questions if he wants, because I don't see any questions, but somebody from the Discord server did join. I'm just making sure he has access to say things if he wants. Okay, let me see if there's any comments. Seeing none, please do like, subscribe, share, and I love to hear your comments. Please do comment, and I will, as normal, end with Tzefania 3:9. Ki az epoch el amim safa berra likro chulam b'shem havaya le'ovdo shchem echad. Your general thoughts on the chapter. Very poetic. It's obvious. It seems obvious to me that it's kind of apocalyptic, right? Talking eschatological, right? About the ending. It is kind of. I was very interested the places where it used the perfect tense as opposed to the present tense. and lots and lots of pedagogic nuns, right? So it's obviously poetic, and there are emphases there, and I'm sure there's all kinds of uh, rabbinic commentary on the fact that there are pedagogic nuns all over the place there. Those are my general thoughts. Okay. And Zephaniah 3:9 means, for then I will restore, and I love this word epoch. If you're going to look anything up, I would look the word hefech in the concordance, to the nations, safa berura, a pure language, a clear language, likro chulam b'shem havaya, so everyone can call in the name of the Lord, the Tetragrammaton, le'ovdo, to serve him with one accord. I will hang out for a few more minutes in case anybody has questions. Otherwise, I will either see you on the Discord or next week. Next week, I think I am probably going to discuss Michael Servetus, and possibly I will. I've had a few requests for chapters, so I am going to have to look through those, see who asked first, and do it that way. Otherwise, shalom.